Uh, Good night, everybody. Welcome,
Night.
welcome. Good night. Welcome to the Friday night Zoom for Friday, August 13th. To have everyone here. Um, if you are, if this is your first time here and you don't know how it works, we're on the Zoom live and we're recording. And if you have a question, you can either, if you want to ask it over your microphone, you can. If you want to be on camera, you can. If you don't want to be on camera and you don't want to be on microphone, then just turn them off. And because we will probably share this to other platforms like YouTube and Facebook and such like. If you have a question and you want to just ask it anonymously, you can use the chat button, or you could go to, if you want to put it in ahead of time, you can go to my blog, Sacred Breath, on WordPress, Sacred Breath Freedom, I think it is, or Gateway to Freedom, something like that. You'll find it. Or you could email it to me. Let me put my email in the chat box. That way everybody can see where the chat box is. Have my email address, which is sacredbreath108 at Gmail. Ubiquitous Gmail. Sacred Breath 108 at gmail.com. Yes, that is correct. All right. So there's the email address if you want to email me a question, maybe for next week or whatever. So I'm going to go ahead and, but welcome everyone. And let me go ahead and mute everyone that's not muted. So mute all, okay, so that there won't be any background noise. But welcome. So I think today I wanted to just start out with 20 minutes of silent sitting, meditation or silent sitting. And you can, you just want to get in a comfortable position. It doesn't have to be a full-on lotus position, right? Just a comfortable position, preferably with your spine straight. We have someone else joining us. Let me, okay. So you want to be in a comfortable position with your spine straight and comfortable enough that you can forget about your body. You don't want your body to be a distraction when you meditate, but not so comfortable that you fall asleep, right? So you have to find the happy balance, the happy medium between them. And during the silent sitting, I recommend you could do one of two things. Either simply place your attention on your breath, watch your breath. Although, watch implies see, which implies the eyesight, the sense of sight, but you have 5 senses. You might watch your breath by listening to the sound of it as it goes in and out, or feeling it as it goes up and down. So it's probably more helpful to say, place your awareness on your breath. Place your attention on your breath. So that's one thing you can do. And then the other thing you can do is to simply watch your thoughts. Place your attention on your thoughts and allow your thoughts to arise. Don't try to resist them or suppress them or fight against them or beat yourself up for having thoughts, but don't follow them. Don't get entangled in them. Don't follow the story to its conclusion. Just watch the thought arise and then come back to yourself. So we'll just begin with 20 minutes of silent sitting, and we'll begin now. If you're using the breath method right now, you're just aware of your breath, maybe the way it feels going in and out of your nose, the way your chest feels as it rises and falls, maybe the sound that your breath makes as it goes in and then out. And if you're using the watching your thoughts method, you're watching your thoughts as if they're clouds passing across the vast expanse of the clear blue sky. And you are that vast expanse, and the clouds just come and go. The thoughts just come and go. No need to get entangled in them. You just watch them arise, stay for a bit, and then disappear like clouds in a vast blue sky. And now we just gently come back to our bodies. I'm going to get my gong. So we've gone the meditation to an end. So the meditation is officially ended now. It is in keeping with all the instruction manuals and textbooks and precepts of Spiritual Teachers 101. So there's two kinds of spiritual teachers. There are spiritual teachers who teach processes and methods and methodologies which are intended to address the issue of suffering. And there are speakers who speak only from an absolute view, who will tell you that there are no processes or methods or techniques, that you are already everything that you seek, and that where you are trying to get to, you are already there. And so it's impossible to get there because you cannot get to a place that you are already at. And in an absolute sense, that's true. And some people are ready for that message. But in a relative sense, some people are not ready, because even though most people on an absolute sense know that that is true, they do a very good job of pretending that they don't know that that is true. And there's an argument to be made, certainly, for insisting that people be radically honest with themselves and stop pretending. And that if you don't offer a method or a process, then you're forcing them to stop pretending, and you're not coddling them. So that's one argument for the radical message that can be made. And in fact, a lot of these speakers would not even begin with a meditation, because they would say that that's simply a method that is indulging you in your belief that you need a method. On the other hand, you could say that if someone comes to a meeting like that with a racing mind, caught up in the thoughts from the day, their fears and concerns and anxieties, are they really even hearing what's being said? That in order to hear, really truly hear any kind of extraordinary message, extraordinary in the sense that it goes beyond the ordinary, beyond the mundane. In order to truly hear any kind of message like this, you need to have somewhat of a calm, quiet, still mind. Your mind can't be racing with a million thoughts at once about all of your worries. You need to have at least a glancing pass at the vast expanse. There's something that Eckhart Tolle once said, that first I'm not going to quote it because I don't have the passage handy right now, but I'll paraphrase it and then I'm going to kind of go a little bit further with it. So Eckhart Tolle once said that understanding is useful up to a point. It can give you a direction. He calls them signposts. If you're just starting out on the spiritual path and you have no idea which way is the edge of the cliff, then a signpost that says the edge of the cliff is that way or that way can be helpful. So understanding, a teaching that gives an understanding to get you started off in the general right, correct direction, that can be helpful. But once you have reached the edge of the cliff, signposts are no longer necessary. In fact, they become a hindrance. So that's what Eckhart Tolle said. What does he mean? Signposts, once you've reached the edge of the cliff, become a hindrance. Well, it's not just a hindrance in the sense of, so if you're trying to get to the edge of the cliff and you're very far away and you have a sign that says edge of the cliff north, and pointing this way north, and you're very far away, now you know, okay, I have to head north. And that's going to be helpful. But once you get to the edge of the cliff, when he says that signposts are no longer necessary, in fact, they become a hindrance. It's not a hindrance just in the sense of, if you get to the edge of the cliff and your way forward is blocked by all these signs saying edge of the cliff this way, right? So that's one way it can be a hindrance. But another way that it can be a hindrance is it can just be confusing. If you have traversed the spiritual path so far that you are now at the edge of the cliff and you see a sign saying edge of the cliff north, you might say, oh, I thought I was at the edge of the cliff. This looks like the edge of the, darn, I really thought I was at the edge of the cliff, but this sign, this pointing, this understanding, this spiritual teacher is telling me the edge of the cliff is north. Well, which way is north from here? An understanding that you no longer need because you've gone beyond that. If it's then presented to you as an understanding that you need to get to the edge of the cliff when you are already at the edge of the cliff, can not only be a hindrance, it can be confusing and it can get you going off in the wrong direction. On the other hand, if you're very far from the edge of the cliff, pointing and understanding that kind of gets you started off in the right direction can save you a lot of time. You may not have to spend the 20 years that the teacher had to spend going down dead-end roads. They might just be trying to save you that wasted energy and wasted time. But if you are at the edge of the cliff, you don't need directions to the edge of the cliff. The only thing you need from a spiritual teacher or a radical speaker is one word. Just one word, jump, jump. Anything else is just going to slow you down, be a hindrance, be confusing, possibly set you off in the wrong direction. But there's also a place for methods and processes and teachings or there can be a place for methods and processes and teachings for people who are not at the edge of the cliff. A radical speaker would say, you are at the edge of the cliff, you're just pretending not to be, and I'm not going to coddle you, so jump. Well, for some, that's going to work. For most, that is going to fall on deaf ears, because they are going to insist on pretending to not be at the edge of the cliff. They're going to insist on pretending to not be at that level, that spiritual level, ready for that radical transmission. They're going to have mundane problems. And you see, that's why you see in a lot of the spiritual literature, spiritual teachers going back and forth between dealing with incredibly lofty and advanced concepts and dealing with ordinary mundane matters. And I suppose it originates in what is the motivation for teaching. Generally, if the teaching is genuine or coming from a genuine place, the motivation is compassion. And generally that compassion, whatever it might be about or whatever form it might take, it can usually be, you can almost always sum it up as compassion for the unnecessary suffering of others. That people are suffering and they are suffering unnecessarily. And there is a compassionate desire that arises out of a spiritual realization to do something about that suffering. Even if you know that the suffering is not real, it feels real to the people who are suffering. And you know that because you remember what it was like for you. And so there arises a compassionate desire to address suffering. And that suffering might be mundane, ordinary, regular issues, and your approach to it might be just regular, mundane, ordinary approaches, because that's what's called for in the moment. You know, you could like, even if you take like just a regular traditional spiritual teacher, like a priest, and you go to the priest because you're having marriage problems. Oftentimes you'll find that even Roman Catholic priests, celibate priests, they study marriage, family, like the latest psychological understandings in marriage and family counseling, and they might even be better trained and more qualified than a licensed marriage and family clinical therapist, like a regular social worker or counselor that you might go to see. They may not be, kind of depends on the luck of the draw. But you might go to your priest about a marital problem, and they might start off with a self-deprecating joke about coming to see a celibate guy may not be your best move if you want to get help with your marriage. But then the next thing you know, they're giving you like top shelf, the high-level psychological advice based on the latest findings. So if you went to this priest and instead of doing that, he said something to you like, why are you bothering me with such trivial things? I don't care about your marriage. I'm, heaven and hell, your eternal damnation and the Trinity. That's what interests me. Take your trivial, your trivial family stuff down the street. I'm sure you can find a counselor or somebody like that who'd be interested in talking to you about this. So if a priest did that, you would think he was pretty heartless. There would be no compassion. Nisargadatta Maharaj had a lot of American and actually, you know, British and European students, people who would come to him. And they would be talking some very high level concepts like the difference between consciousness and awareness. Meditating on the I am. But he also had regular, ordinary Indian people. He lived in a very poor neighborhood in India. And most of his neighbors were on, you know, struggling, to say the least. And so he would also, it wasn't just spiritual pilgrims from the US or Europe that would come to his humble abode and seek his advice. He would get people from the neighborhood who would come and seek his advice. And the people from the neighborhood generally were not going to ask him, did not ask him questions about meditation or the difference between consciousness and awareness. They would have much more practical concerns like dealing with illness or I need to make the money for my daughter's dowry and I'm already working 4 jobs and I'm nowhere near having enough. What shall I do? And, you know, Nisargadatta did not just throw them out for asking such trivial questions. He met them where they were with compassion to address their problems, what they were struggling with, to alleviate their suffering. Now, it's true, towards the end of his life, when he was dying of cancer, he was very weak. He could barely speak. Just talking for a few sentences completely drained him of energy. During that phase, he announced that he was no longer going to take ordinary questions concerning ordinary life, practical problems of an ordinary nature, because he wanted to only deal with the highest teachings that he could possibly deliver, and conserve his energy and just give the highest teachings he could, because they were all being recorded, and he wanted to make sure that the highest things that he could possibly share with mankind that there would be a record of it, that he would be able to get it all out. But even that is an example of compassion, because he was concerned that the best that he could possibly offer for everyone be recorded for posterity. And even the Buddha, you know, the Buddha would often deal with advanced questions like how to end suffering, the best way to meditate. But oftentimes he would have just ordinary people with ordinary problems coming to him for advice. And he didn't kick them out. Oh, you're wasting my time. Such issues are trivial. They are beneath me. There was a compassion to try to alleviate suffering. And if that alleviation of suffering is best served by an uncompromising message of you are not suffering, you only think you're suffering because you think you're here, but you aren't. If that will serve that person, then that will be the message for that person. But if it doesn't serve that person, it might well be the worst thing in the world to say to that person. It might strike them as cold, heartless, harsh, and cruel. So there's a tension between the highest teachings, which really are for everyone, and the teachings addressed to people who are pretending not to be ready for the highest teachings. And I think a really good example of this is a story that I've heard Gangaji tell about her Indian guru, Papaji. So Papaji was similar to Nisargadatta Maharaj in that he had a mixture of students from America and Europe, along with people, local people from his neighborhood who would come to seek his advice. And so one time, one of his local neighborhood fellow Indians had come to Papaji for advice on this matter. He said, I live above an automobile repair shop. My apartment is upstairs from an automobile repair shop, and it's constantly noisy. The sound of hammers clanging and power tools running and body work sheet metal being punched out. And so I find it very difficult to meditate. And I was wondering if you had any tips that you could give me, any advice that you could give me on how I can meditate, how I can make my meditations better. And so what Papaji did was he called together all of his American students and read the question to them and asked them to write out an answer for this man. What would be your answer? What advice would you give him? And a couple of days later, they had satsang, and Papaji read out the man's question and then read out the answers of his American students. And his American students, the answers were things like, this is a wonderful opportunity to cultivate equanimity in the face of adversity. Another answer was something along the lines of, it is only difficult for you to meditate in this with noisy environment because you have made the noise wrong. It is your judgment that the noise is wrong and your resistance to it that makes your meditation difficult. If you can accept the noise, then your meditations would be easier. And so there's like 6 or 7 answers, generally along these lines. And Papaji read them all. And then he said, these are all very good answers, but none of them is correct. Here is the correct answer. Move. Why do you stay there? Move. So that is the balance between an uncompromising spiritual message and a practical message. In that instance, the practical message, move, will do more to alleviate the suffering of that person than any advice or technique about cultivating equanimity in the face of adversity or learning not to let the noise bother you. If that person were at the level where they could meditate in the middle of a cacophony of power tools and hammers clanging, they probably wouldn't have asked the question in the first place. And if they don't move, they may never get to the point in their meditation where such a acquired ability ever becomes possible. Sometimes you have to be realistic about where you are and what you're capable of so that you can make further progress. And so we have to be realistic when we're dealing right now. I think I am not really certain that we don't have a bigger issue today with how agitated, tense, and nervous people are getting, our friends and neighbors, the people around us, the people we encounter at the grocery store or the post office. Everyone is stressed out right now, and that may be a bigger problem than the pandemic itself. And so it's important to realize that trying to cultivate an attitude of peaceful equanimity in the face of adversity may not be the most compassionate advice for most people. It may not be doable. It may be quite the challenge. So it's rather like the man who's living in the apartment above the automobile shop. We may be fooling ourselves if we try to convince ourselves that we can remain calm and peaceful no matter what others are doing around us, no matter how crazy people get. We may be fooling ourselves if we try to think, to convince ourselves that, well, maybe today I won't encounter any crazy people. Just like the guy in the automobile shop was hoping, maybe on Sunday they'll quit banging out auto parts. And whenever he had time for meditation, it always seemed that the work in the auto shop was at its loudest. So invariably, whenever you are at the end of your rope, that's when you're going to meet the crazy people. And it's may not, and to think otherwise is to be perhaps foolishly optimistic. So perhaps it's more practical to just say to ourselves, people are really stressed right now. They're at the end of their ropes, they're acting crazy. I am stressed right now. I don't need to encounter any of this. So there's no place, I can't move. There's no place in the world that I can go to where I'm not going to find stressed out people. Maybe Antarctica, but I really don't want to live in Antarctica. So what do I do? What is the practical solution for alleviating suffering in this instance? First, the recognition that it's going to happen. You are going to be stressed out and you're going to encounter stressed out people. That way you don't get blindsided by it, right? If you are forewarned is forearmed. If you know ahead of time, if you recognize ahead of time that it's going to happen, then you're not going to be taken by surprise. If you just expect it to happen, then you will not be blindsided. And I guess the most practical, well, two practical techniques. One, if you can remember, if you can remember, that's always the catch, right? In the midst of the encounter, all of these things go out the window. Nobody remembers anything. But if you can remember, 20 connected breaths. You take 4 breaths, 4 fast breaths, and a 5th breath, a deep one. So yeah, I guess let me give the let me show you how to do 20 connected breaths for the new people. So 20 connected breaths it's really 5 breaths repeated 4 times for a total of 20. The breathing is in and out through the nose. In through the nose and out is 1 breath. You're going to do 20 breaths. It's really 5 breaths repeated 4 times for a total of 20. The first 4 breaths are as quickly as you can, and the 5th breath is as deep as you can. So you focus on speed for the first 4 breaths, and you focus on taking in as much air as you can for the 5th breath. So every 5th breath is the deep one. So 5, 10, 15, 20, those are the deep breaths. So if you stick your finger out after every deep breath, when you have 4 fingers out, you've done 20 breaths. The breaths are connected. There's no pause. You don't pause between the inhale and the exhale. You don't pause between the exhale and the next inhale. And so you connect the breaths from the first breath all the way to the final 20th breath. A common mistake people make is they have a tendency to pause between sets of 5. They do 5 breaths perfectly, and then they pause and do the next 5, and then they pause and do the next. So that's not correct. All the breaths are connected from breath 1 to breath 20. So breath 1, 2, 3, and 4 are fast. The 5th breath is deep. 6, 7, 8, and 9 are fast. The 10th breath is deep. 11, 12, 13, 14 are fast. Breath 15 is deep. 16, 17, 18, 19, the fast ones. 20 is deep. In and out through the nose. 1 inhale and exhale counts as 1 breath. You do 20 breaths. They're all connected from breath 1 to breath 20. And so I'll demonstrate now. And those of you who know how to do this can join me in this. And for those of you who don't know, you can watch this, and then it'll be up on YouTube later, and you can study it to your heart's content. But it's not that difficult. You'll probably get it tonight. So it goes like this. Let's see. I'm gonna stick my fingers out. I'm gonna count. So it goes like this. And so a couple of important points to note there. You notice I did not, as soon as I finished the 20th breath, like jump up and open my eyes and start running around. I spent a few moments in that state that was created by the 20 breaths, because it's a centered, restful state. of consciousness. So after you generate the state, you want to stay in it for as long as you can, or as long as life will allow. And the other thing to notice, the other important point about it is it doesn't take that long. So if you can remember in the midst of the craziness to do 20 connected breaths, you only need to be able to get away for 20 seconds. But even that sometimes is not available. If it is, then, you know, 20 connected breaths will help a lot. If it isn't, then the other practical technique is to look at the craziness not as something being done to you, but to see it as a message being delivered to you. Read it, interpret it, take it as a message for you. And you ask yourself, what is the message? And you dismiss the messenger. Sort of like the old cliche about, you know, don't shoot the messenger for bringing you bad news. If you encounter a stressful situation and you see the situation or person as a messenger delivering you something, some piece of information, some realization, some perceptual way of viewing things that you, the universe, wants you to have, and that they are just the messenger. It removes them from the you have less of a tendency to get exasperated with someone if you see them as like a neutral messenger who's just delivering a message from the universe, and like the, you know, the messengers of old who would deliver sealed letters from the king of France to the king of England, and the messenger doesn't even know what the message is. That's not their function. They're just delivering a message. And you're the king of England, and you're getting the message from the king of France, and it's the king of France appears to think it's important that you have this information, and the messenger delivering it is of no consequence. There is, you can have a kind of dispassionate equanimity with the craziness that we're all finding ourselves involved in these days. If we see the problematic person or situation as simply an innocent messenger, and focus more on what is the message here, what is the lesson here, what am I being told to pay attention to, rather than the person or the problematic person or the problematic situation. So you can kind of put a distance there that helps us to maintain our sanity and lessens suffering. So for those that came in late, let me just say I've sent my email. I posted my email address on the chat so that if you have a question, not for tonight, because I won't be seeing my email tonight during the Zoom chat, but like if you had a question you wanted me to answer next Friday, you could send it to me by email. You can also go to my WordPress blog, Sacred Breath. I think the URL is like sacredbreathfreedom.wordpress.com, and the title of the blog is Sacred Breath, a Gateway to Freedom. But you Google it, you'll find it. So there's a contact form on there that lets you send me questions. You could send questions that way as well. And I also posted the email address on the chat so that everyone hopefully can see where the chat box is. So then during the Zoom, you can, if you have a question, you can type it in there and send it to me, or type it in there and post it. And I'll read it and answer it during the Zoom. And I sent the email address from me to everyone, but you have a choice. You could send your question only to me, so only I would see it. And if you want me to be discreet and private about your question, just indicate that on the chat comment and I will. But also there's the option of asking your question during the meeting. You just unmute your microphone and ask the question. And I'm recording, and I'll probably put these up on YouTube and Facebook. But it's up to you. If you want to interact directly, you can, turn on your video and turn on your microphone, or maybe just use the microphone and leave the video off, or just use the chat box, or just send me an email for next week. So that's how it works. So are there any questions? Okay, there are no questions tonight. So we will bring the Friday night Zoom to an end officially with the official gong. And I hope this was helpful. Good night. Namaste, everyone.
Good night. Namaste.
Good night. Have a good weekend. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. Woo-hoo.